Hi and welcome to TFF World Cup show. This is Group E and it's myself, Rob Harris and Andrew Flint today, and we're covering Brazil, Costa Rica, Switzerland and Serbia. Andrew, how are you, mate?
Yeah, not bad, Rob. Not bad, thanks. It's getting real now. You know, we're getting to the end of the domestic seasons, and the World Cup really is coming into over the horizon.
Now,
but looking forward to this one.
Before we start the World Cup, you're actually busy today in Siberia. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, today is, well, in fact, this weekend is the last round of top flight and second tier games in Russia. So a lot of obviously the home nation players will be in action. Tomorrow is the Premier League, but today Tyumen are in a relegation dogfight, and
it's FC Tyumen, for anyone who doesn't know.
They actually set the record for the worst ever points total and performance in the Russian Premier League top flight about 20 years ago. Yeah. But nowadays they're not quite so not so glamorous as a relegation fight in the Premier League.
Same, because you're based in Siberia.
Yeah, no, my local side, Tyumen, they're yeah, it's a decent sized city, but very few people actually turn up to watch the games, which is a bit disappointing, really, because you'd think that when you live in England, when you live no more than 10, 15 kilometres from the next professional team, and quite often if you live near a big city, there's a lot of competition for fans, and there's got to be creative drawing fans in. Here, the next team is 300 kilometres away, and yet even still, there's very little enthusiasm for the team, unfortunately, and they'll be even less if they get relegated. But
yeah, you'd think that the locals would all get behind them. All right, we'll get up with that. You're doing an online broadcast, is that right?
I won't actually be doing the online broadcast myself. I'll be watching all of the games simultaneously on my laptop, but I'll be tweeting moments of anguish or glory, depending on how the games go. But
you cover games and you get sort of VIP backstage passes, and you get to question the managers at times.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do. I get my accreditation for FNL games, for the second tier games with Tyumen. It's quite a laid back atmosphere towards that. I used to get accredited for lower league games in England, and it was a really tough process. It was an old boy, a very closed atmosphere.
Yeah.
And it's not a very welcoming atmosphere for an up and coming journalist. But over here they're very open. They're very, you have to jump through the hoops, but once you jump through them and they know who you are,
you're a face.
You get a genuine insight into how the club runs.
You've spoken to Andre Villas-Boas before when he was St. Petersburg boss. Is that right?
Yeah, no, there was one. His first season, his second season actually, he came to Yekaterinburg, and he'd been criticised the season before, despite winning the league, for playing a relatively negative style, which I find highly ironic, because the last two managers, Mircea Lucescu and Roberto Mancini, have both played a fairly poor style and finished 4th and 5th in the league, so not exactly great. And I just mentioned in the post-match conference, I said, do you feel under pressure to play a certain style of football? And he went off on a rant saying, it's people like you who give this idiot a platform. The idiot he was referring to is a Zenit legend. He won the league in the 80s. Yeah. And then Villas-Boas had prompted him into slagging off a Zenit legend, and I sort of shrank into the corner rather nervously. But
Andrew,
that sort of good.
I watched a few Spurs games when he was in charge, and it's a good thing I wasn't there, because I'd have told him what I thought of him. I never rated him, but... Anyway, let's move on. We're digressing. Group E, on the surface, I mean, you've got to make Brazil favourites, and then it's everyone battling for second, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an original viewpoint to pick Brazil out as the favourites. I mean, the last World Cup, of course, they were massively disappointed with that. Well, Maracanazo Mark II against Germany. They've got a point to prove. And they've also got a slightly more streamlined squad, I would argue, this time round. In that,
smaller options.
They've got a point to prove psychologically. Gabriel Jesus will be, if not the pinpoint, at least he and Neymar will be an absolutely terrifying
Andrew,
partnership.
I think their team's better than 4 years ago. I think they've got young players that they didn't have 4 years ago, and I think certain players are at their peak now. I think they're improved.
Well, yeah, I think I'd go along with that. I think the nature of Brazilian football and the way fans follow their teams was so obsessive. I wasn't overly surprised by how the fact they crumbled under pressure at home. I don't blame the players themselves. I blame the nature of Brazilian football fandom. And now it's almost a weight off their shoulders to not be playing at home. And they're just a phenomenal side. You look at the likes of Roberto Firmino's been a very unsung hero. He's probably unlikely to start every game. But when he does play,
he's a good squad addition, and he's in the form of his life, isn't he?
He is. He's got the confidence. He's got he's on stunning form. Everybody will look at Mohamed Salah at Liverpool, but Firmino has been, I don't know exactly how many goals he's been involved in, but I think it's something 42 goals scored and assisted.
Salah's had an extraordinary season, like a phenomenal, freakish season. If that hadn't happened, I think Firmino would be their player of the season.
Oh, without question for me. And if Brazil can call on a player like that,
which they didn't have 4 years ago. Yeah.
Well, quite. And I think another player I'd pick out for Brazil, who I actually really do think will be their danger man, is Douglas Costa. On loan at Juventus. When he played for Brazil against Russia in March, he was the standout player. He's a relentless attacking winger. He's a physical guy. He's rapidly so quick, and he just
likely to start.
I'd be very surprised if he didn't start, because I think as far as I understand, Brazil's first choice front three would be Gabriel Jesus, Neymar and Douglas Costa. If Neymar is fit, I can't remember when Neymar is due to come back, but I believe he is due to come back for the World.
Where does that leave? So you're saying Neymar,
Costa and Gabriel Jesus.
So what about Coutinho, Firmino? Are they going to play behind?
Well, I guess that's the main challenge. Coutinho, I'm sure, will. I think, because where Coutinho played when Brazil played Russia, and this is what I kind of expect them to play in the World Cup, was Coutinho played more in the role he played at Liverpool. In other words, slightly more withdrawn. Of the midfield three, the most advanced.
Right.
And then, of course, you've got... you could choose. Personally, I would have Casemiro and... I would have Paulinho. Fernandinho, actually, to be honest, for me.
Phenomenal 6-7 players we've just mentioned there. They look good.
That is terrifying, Rob. That is terrifying.
That's for me. That's why they're so much more improved than 4 years ago. They were playing Fred up front 4 years ago. They didn't, and then Neymar got injured, and they really sort of the pack of cards collapsed.
It was too much focus on Neymar, wasn't it?
Yeah. Now, when I was watching Brazil 4 years ago, I think a lot of people were willing Brazil to win it, to do well, because they're the home country, and I know England's the home of football, but I always feel Brazil is like the spirit of football.
Yeah.
And once I knew England weren't going to do well, I was rooting for Brazil, so I was upset for them, to be honest. The manner of the way they lost is going to leave scars. But all the way throughout that tournament, they never looked convincing. It was like they were just doing enough. And then Germany I think by the time they got to Germany and took an early lead, Brazil's collapsed. And it was one of the most shocking moments in football, really. Sort of a where were you that day sort of thing. Yeah,
it was. I mean, to recover from that it takes some doing, and
mental
for me,
will be there, I think.
Well, for me, it's not just the squad itself, like we've just discussed, is already what we would say is improved. Certainly, one big bit of injury news though: Dani Alves, I read yesterday morning, is out of the World Cup. Now that's a problem for them.
That's experience, and that's as a quality player, but that's that winning mentality they've lost now.
Well, yeah, I'd say that's the main part of it. I would argue he's the leader, like the mental leader of the team, because Thiago Silva was captain in the home World Cup 4 years ago, and he's a great player. Of course, he's had a lot of experience throughout European football, but Dani Alves, he seems to have that. He's got a bit of joie de vivre without being flippant. He's won countless trophies, and he still bombs up and down the line, keeps himself in physical condition, tip-top condition. So
I can't believe Barcelona let him go. Was it 2 years ago they let him go? I think that was a mistake.
It was very, very strange why PSV let him go, but there we go. That's what happened. But
very sad for him, because that's his last World Cup. That's a sad one. Never nice to see that.
I'd say he's probably one of the most respected, as a personality, he's one of the most respected top-end players. Yeah. I'll never forget, like most people won't either, when Eric Abidal needed, I think it was a kidney transplant, and Dani Alves instantly said, look, you can use my kidney. I will donate my kidney to you to keep you. And that, I mean, okay, there are plenty of people in the world who do that, but he still did it. He knew he didn't do it for publicity. Nobody found out about it straight away. He just simply said to his mates, forget his teammate, forget hoping I want to win more trophies so we need Eric back. He just did it as a human being, and that for me it speaks volumes. So a lot of people will be gutted for him to miss that, definitely.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, Brazil are terrifying sort of in attack. Their midfield looks strong, especially if Casemiro stays fit. He sort of is the glue there in the middle. What about the defence, which has often been their Achilles heel?
Yeah, that's always been a traditional question mark, I guess you could say.
Looks like Alisson will start as goalkeeper, no? The Roma keeper.
Well, I mean, in goal, they've arguably one of the form goalkeepers in the world. Not the best, I would say, but certainly one of them. Edison Moraes at Manchester City, I will hold my hands up and admit, when City paid all that money for him last summer, I thought they've just gone nuts. But he's so calm under pressure, and he's not even their first choice keeper. Yeah. So with Alisson in goal, that's going to spread confidence to the defence in the first place. That's a major, major advantage. So that's a strong point, and you don't often say that about Brazilian goalkeepers.
No.
But this new pair, if Alisson's injured, then not even then. Edison in goal, he's a great keeper as well.
Yeah.
So I guess their backline, it's quite hard to know exactly who will take over from Dani Alves, but you've got Marquinhos, who's a young player, and he's been playing effectively instead of Thiago Silva at PSG, as far as I understand.
He is a quality player, though. He's a quality player.
He's a strong point.
Centre backs, Thiago Silva.
Yeah, Miranda, Inter Milan. He's got a lot of experience, so they've got some options there. I don't honestly know who will. I mean, Dani Alves would be the first name on the team sheet pretty much. So I'm not sure.
On the left.
Alexandre is, well, I mean, he's.
It's not a bad team, is it? Let's be honest.
You've got to say it's not bad. It's all right.
I think that they'll be in the last four, and after that, for me, it's anything can happen, can't it? But I think Brazil will be in that last four.
You know what I'm actually secretly hoping?
Yeah.
I don't expect this to be the case, but I'm hoping that Brazil will play Germany in the second round. That would be. I mean, God, could you imagine the tension, the revenge that Brazil would need?
I would love it. I'd love it if Brazil beat them. Supposed to be neutral.
I mean, look, it's nothing about being anti-German because we're English and we've got the rivalry with them. I actually would like to see Brazil win because it's nothing.
Andrew, nothing but respect for Germany and the way they do bring players through and their winning mentality, their everything about them, their leagues, their ticket pricings. Apart from Bayern Munich keep dominating, but there's so much good to say about Germany. So, but I want to see someone else win. I don't want to see Germany win all the time.
That kind of is it. That really is it. I mean, it pains me to say this, but in the Champions League final, I will want Liverpool to win ahead of Real Madrid because I want somebody else to win. I think it's a natural instinct of neutrals, at least in football. So for that alone, Germany are. Yeah. The thing is, the other side as well, Rob. If Germany are knocked out early in this tournament, they're not going to have any problems. They're settled. They've got a strong base of development and mentality. They'll come back strong the next tour, no problem at all. If Brazil take yet another knock, you wonder whether they will. You wonder how they would cope with it. But anyhow,
around the late 90s, early sort of millennium, we beat them 5-1 away. Probably the best ever moment of my life as an England fan. But Germany kind of said, right, we've been in decline for a few years, and they kind of made a clean sweep on everything and started again at grassroots level. And it's they've been unbelievable. They've been so consistently successful. They got to 2 or 3 finals and lost them, but they were making progress all the time. Semi-finals, finals, now they're winners. They've just been slowly improving for the last, 10, 15 years. And looking at the talent that Germany has now, I don't see anything changing in the next 10, 15 years.
No, I mean it's really a bit depressing almost as an Englishman to think, if you look at the youth coming through, you look at the English youth coming through. There's a lot of really talented players. We've had success at under 17 World Cup level, under 19 level. It really looks positive. And yet, then you've got Germany to get past, which is it's like you're back to square one again, almost. But
anyway, Germany's not in this group, so we'll move on. Brazil look good, so we've covered them. Let's talk about Costa Rica now. Costa Rica, don't know a huge amount about, but let's be honest, 4 years ago they topped a group with England, Uruguay, and Italy, so they're no mugs. They made it to the quarterfinals, and we know 1 or 2 of their star players. Both have played in the Premier League with mixed success, Brian Ruiz and Joel Campbell. So what do we think about Costa Rica?
Costa Rica, I think, are certainly a lot of fans, second team. They're a very popular side. They play with a lot of technically talented players. There's what was the fella's name? The playmaker who's got over 100 caps. I can't remember his name now. They've got Celso Borges, who's played in European football for a long time. They've got a few players who have a huge amount of experience. Christian Bolaños, that's the player I was thinking of, sorry. Christian Bolaños.
Is it a team that's been together quite a while?
Well, they've got a lot of players who have been there a while, yeah. I mean, you've got Bolaños is the player I remember from 4 years ago. I first heard of him on Football Manager when he was a 21-year-old at Deportivo Saprissa, and he was an attacking midfielder, right, left, centre. I always bought him for my teams, threw him in, always did well. And in real life, he's one of those go-to guys. He's not got a lot of pace. He's in his mid-30s now already, but he's got. And this is what I think is really pleasing. When you've got these slightly weaker countries and they have these experienced players who can still be valuable, it shows it's not all about pace. It's not all about athleticism. No. It's about intelligence, and they've certainly got that. You mentioned Brian Ruiz and Joel Campbell. I mean, personally, Rob, I don't know about you, but I remember when Joel Campbell first came to Arsenal, and he was sent out on loan infinite times. I thought, this kid is absolutely spectacular.
He's going to be something special.
Yeah. I mean, we all remember, of course, Paulo Wanchope in the mid-90s. Yeah. How good was he at Derby County, And I thought, this guy's going to be even better. So,
Costa Rica, like a lot of, with respect to a lot of the smaller, weaker nations, they often have teams and then stay together for a long period of time. So that develops a very strong spirit and ethic, and they can be very difficult to beat because they have such a fantastic team spirit. Greece in 2004 spring to mind, Denmark in 92. I'm not saying Costa Rica are going to win it, but these teams are not easy to beat. Iceland is another example, the more modern example, Iceland. Yeah. It's amazing what you can get with a small group of players, good team spirit, everyone pulling in the right direction. Sometimes bigger teams with a greater pool of talent don't have that.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It can be seen as an advantage. When in the last episode, when we were talking with Jim about Iceland, that was one of the main points that he pulled up, and with good reason.
Yeah. Because we're asked, why are England always underperforming? And we've got a pretty strong, reasonably strong pool of players to choose from. It might have got weaker in the last few years, but we still have better resources, greater resources than a lot of these nations. But we struggle. I've heard people say about England that we'd be better off putting out a team from the Championship. But
I think if the World Cup wasn't so close on the horizon, if we had another year or two, just purely hypothetically, it's never going to happen. But if you were guaranteed qualification for the World Cup, let's say England were hosting, right, in Russia's position, and they had 2 years to experiment, I really would. and this is actually, I've mentioned it before, I won't go into detail on it, but Russia have done to a reasonably successful degree over the last 18 months, is clear out the deadwood because there's no pressure on. Yep. England permanently play with pressure, and I think that's part of the problem. Yep. Costa Rica play without it, therefore they generally play a fascinating brand of football. So they are
qualifying Costa Rica. They got past the United States. I beat them 4-0 in one of the matches. So this is not some team turning up to make up the numbers. This is a solid side.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget, of course, that in the nature of the World Cup, when there's only 3 group games, 1 win puts you on the brink of qualification already. I mean, 4 points is the standard benchmark for. That's when you start looking at being on the brink of qualification. First game for Costa Rica against Serbia. That could be one of the key games, because honestly, if I really, we'll come to this towards the end of the episode, I'm sure, when we give our predictions, but I see Serbia and Costa Rica only just behind Switzerland, not much behind them. And that first game puts pressure on Switzerland, because you'd expect Brazil to beat Switzerland first game. And if Costa Rica get 3 points, Switzerland are already playing catch-up. Suddenly, who knows? Who knows?
So, in your opinion, you think Switzerland are the second strongest team in that group?
I mean, it's not much in it for me.
No.
But I do, for one reason.
Yeah.
That they have a small core of young players just starting to come through into the team. I mean, the 3 players I'm mostly thinking of are the Briel and Bolo.
Is he going to be a star today?
I'm not sure if he's going to start, but he'll be there or thereabouts. And you got to remember, the Bundesliga is arguably the strongest league, if not one of the strongest leagues in the world.
Yeah.
And he's playing up front for a team that are finishing second in the league, ahead of Borussia Dortmund at the moment.
Yeah.
You've got Manuel Akanji in defence, he's only 21. I mean, he was fantastic in the Champions League against Manchester United at home, against CSK Moscow. Yeah. He's a tall lad. He very rarely goes to ground, and he's a calm presence at the back.
Yeah. No, I like he's got real potential. I think if he's going to start in the back line, he's going to be one of them.
I think he's likely to start because he's only played 4 or 5 times, but he was so good in the qualifiers. I was watching a few highlights of the qualifiers for Switzerland and saw him against Northern Ireland.
Which, by the way, they were very lucky to get past. I mean, they had a dodgy penalty, which should never have been given. They didn't look any better than Northern Ireland, to be honest.
Well, you see, this is the thing. A lot of countries will not always perform at their best, but if they've got 1 or 2 solid leaders, especially in a 3-man defence, which Switzerland play, then that makes all the difference in the world. Because if you know that, look, okay, we're going to invite pressure onto ourselves, but we've got somebody who can distribute it efficiently and who can be positioned well to at least give us an extra man at the back when we need, instead of drifting further forward, that makes all the difference in the world. And for me, Akanji certainly has, in the long term, he's going to be a rock at the back for Switzerland.
Now they've got fullbacks, Liechtensteiner, very experienced Juventus fullback. They've got Ricardo Rodriguez of Milan. He doesn't get too much game time at the moment, but still, that's a good option.
Yeah, I mean, he's just won the Italian. No, sorry, not one. He's just come runner-up in the Italian Cup, beaten by Juventus. But he's at least had some game time. Granit Xhaka.
Yeah, they got Fabian Schär. And what about Zakaria? I like this player.
Well, yeah, I've not seen a lot of him in person, if I'm being honest. But as far as I know, he's extremely highly rated. If you're playing in a Bundesliga side, for me already that's an automatic stamp of quality. Yeah. Again, he's one of his young generation I mentioned that is starting to come through. Whether they all start at the World Cup doesn't matter so much. But the fact is that they're in the squad, and it means that the more experienced players are kept on their toes because they know a poor performance, and they've got a hungry 20, 21-year-old playing Bundesliga football. He wants their place. So it's a good motivator, that.
Now, for many people perhaps not too familiar with Switzerland and what's going on, I think Shaqiri would be a big star for them, probably one of their big names. But he's not had a great season at domestic level. He's got a relegation under his belt. I wonder if that'll have any impacts. There's quite a bit of pressure on Shaqiri as one of their main men, I think. They don't seem to have an obvious target man.
Well, I mean, Haris Seferovic is really the man that I would assume will be the target man if they play with a big man up front.
And he's again another one. He's out of favour at Benfica at the moment. So they seem to have a lot of key players. Not Rodriguez at Milan, Liechtenstein, Juventus. They're not necessarily starters for their team.
Yeah, for me it comes down to quite how much faith they instill in their managers. So what will he go with? Will he go with the younger guys? Will he trust them? There's Dimitri Oberlin as well at Basel, who for me was absolutely, again, another player in the Champions League who was electric against CSKA Moscow and Manchester United. He's probably not going to start, but as a player off the bench, he is absolutely lightning quick. It's a bit of an unknown quantity, Switzerland, is basically the point I'm trying to arrive at. There is, on paper, if they have their first choice team on form, fit, they are a genuinely terrifying team as well. I mean, I say terrifying a lot, but they've got a lot of different options up front. Now, they've got experience in midfield, and they've got players in defence who have won Champions League. So
now we're saying that a lot of the players are maybe not getting as much game time as they would want, but could that be an advantage? Does it matter that certain players are not playing every week for their players? Could it be that they arrive at a World Cup fresh?
It's a very good point, Rob. I mean, I'd say there's a sliding scale of how I would answer it, depending on quite how much game time they've missed. Sometimes it can be a blessing in disguise. I'd say for two reasons it could be good. One, like you mentioned, keep them fresh physically. Two, they might have to prove a point to earn their place back in the side or put themselves in the shop window. That's a lot of what the World Cup ends up resulting in, the players moving on. So a lot of players, and you mentioned Shaqiri, being relegated with Stoke, no chance Shaqiri will stay in the Championship. No. And I reckon quite a few teams, will be looking out, and he'll know that. Therefore, will the motivation be higher? Will they be more determined?
Yeah, you
could argue they will. Yeah.
Right, let's move on to Serbia. Now, Serbia is quite close to my heart because I lived there for a year, a few years back. I've been to the Eternal Derby, Red Star Partizan, a couple of occasions. I've seen my own team, Tottenham, play there, away at Partizan. I know what the fans are like, the supporters are like. They're passionate, intense. Serbians, similar to Croatians, technically good on the ball. Negatives are probably organisation and discipline at times. For example, they conceded, I think, 10 goals in the qualifiers. But there's a lot of talent in the Serbian team and quite a bit of experience. So should we go through Serbia's chances?
Yeah. No, you mentioned experience. There are a lot of names that players that people will know across the continent, really, or across the world. I mean, Alexander Kolarov, Champions League semi-final. Branislav Ivanovic has had a long history at Chelsea.
Yeah. Kolarov impressed me, by the way. Kolarov in the Champions League this season, he caught my eye. He still looks a class player.
I mean, he's a very, very powerful runner, and he's a very good attacking option, despite obviously playing at, left back, left wing back, depending on the formation.
I think his playing style got a little bit exposed under Guardiola last season, so he was one of the obvious players to be shipped out. But in a different system, I think he's a very good player still, with a lot to offer.
Well, I'd say he's one of those players who needs to be given the sort of mental license to be a leader of the team, almost a bit of license to get forward more than perhaps Guardiola would want in a more organised system. And there's nothing wrong with it. Simply, if he wasn't necessary for the team, fine, he was moved on. But he's at the end of his career. He doesn't really desperately need to prove a point, and yet he has had a good season with Roma. I look at another ex-Premier League player, Matija Nastasic. Remember him at City, Rob?
Yeah.
He really nailed down a place. He had a lot of
Schalke. Did he go to Germany?
Yeah, exactly. He's gone to Schalke, and again, using the Bundesliga as a benchmark, I think is a pretty solid indicator if people haven't watched him regularly. Yeah. Schalke, I mean, I repeat this point, they are finishing above Borussia Dortmund this season. They're likely to finish second in the Bundesliga.
Yep.
Now, Bayern Munich run away with it, sure, but to be the second best team in the Bundesliga and to be the rock at the back in that team, that's a very, very high recommendation.
It's a good barometer, isn't it? So,
yeah, absolutely.
And obviously, you said earlier, Ivanovic. We all know Ivanovic. I mean, okay, his best days are behind him, but again, he knows what it's like to win. He's got a big game mentality, big game experience. So they've got some natural leaders.
Yeah, that will be a major plus for them. So yeah, I mean, in terms of experience, you can't really argue against that. And like we mentioned, there's quite a reasonably strong English squad as well.
Yeah.
You were mentioning earlier, Rob, before we started, about Dusan Tadic at Southampton.
Yeah, he's a big player for them. In the last few years, a lot has gone through him. So if he's been playing well, they've been playing well. He's been a key player for them. The one that excites me is the young midfielder at Lazio, Milinkovic-Savic. Well,
I think he's one of those who's really got pretty much the world at his feet right now. If he wanted to, he could get a move to not quite any team in the world, but other than the top 3 or 4, he probably could get his pick if he wanted to.
So this is a great opportunity for him to sort of announce himself on the biggest stage.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They've got Matic. Still one of the best holding midfielders in the game. I think possibly Chelsea made a mistake letting him go. In fact, I definitely think they made a mistake letting him go.
Yeah. No, I mean, as a Manchester
United as well. For me, that didn't make sense, that transfer.
No, it seemed very odd at the time. I think Chelsea will in the end they'll replace him or change their system so they cope without him. But as a Manchester United fan, I was delighted when we signed him. And I think one thing people should probably remember at this point is, his reputation perhaps has suffered just a little bit because Manchester United have been so... Well, I'm not going to mince my words. They've been very poor this season. They've not been up to the standards that fans demand of them. And Matic has had an unspectacular season, but people should remember a lot of that is to do with how the role he's been given at club level. At international level, he will have a slightly more hands-on role in midfield. He'll have a slightly more playmaking role even. And he has that passing ability.
Manchester United standards are ridiculous, and most teams in the world. I mean, second in the table in an FA Cup final is a good season. But I think if we all accept Man City was the best team in the country by a mile, the next best position you can get is second. I think it was the manner of some of United's performances this season, which is what people were bothered about, rather than a league place of second isn't a disgrace, and probably going out of Europe to Sevilla. It was those two things for Manchester.
Yeah. I mean, Matic. I went along with a lot of the popular opinion because I genuinely thought it was right that Matic would be a very, very key part of the jigsaw that we needed. A solid, reliable base, releasing, Martial, Rashford, Pogba if he played further forward. I really thought that would be the key, and I think he can be. Mourinho is the problem for me. But for Serbia, Matic in the middle, a lot of the players will look around him as a really solid, reliable leader.
Definitely. They've got up front Mitrovic. He's a bit hot and cold for me. I've seen him play. He's when he's on it, he's a handful, but very temperamental. Is it the young Benfica player, Zivkovic?
I have not seen him play a lot myself personally, if I'm honest.
I think there's a little bit of noise about him at the moment in terms of a move. So I can't pronounce Adam Lajic. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, as a Manchester United fan, I remember when we signed him a long time ago. What was it, 6, 7, maybe 8 years ago? He never quite came through into the first team, but in Italy, he's been brilliant. I think he was at Fiorentina, and then he's now at Torino. So, I mean, he's got a quality left foot out wide. There were options. I mean, we're starting to say similar things about a lot of teams in this World Cup, but that's why they're at the World Cup. There are lots of options there. Even if they're not frontline names, there are dangerous players.
I don't see an awful lot between Costa Rica, Switzerland or Serbia. I think we're talking about fine margins.
Yeah, absolutely. I go along with that.
I'm struggling to call this one.
Well, you know, Rob, I think we're at the prediction stage now. We've got to start putting our necks on the line here, saying what we think. Brazil, I think we're agreed.
Yes, for me, yeah, definitely. For me, Switzerland concern me. I think Switzerland are fragmented. I think they've got, what's that saying, the sum of all parts or something. But they're individually Switzerland. I'm not sure as a team. I'm not sure. I'm inclined to go for me, Serbia or Costa Rica is the key. I like Costa Rica's team spirit, and I like some of the individuals in Serbia. I'm going to stick my neck out and go Costa Rica.
I mean, look, Rob, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I couldn't really argue with you saying any of Switzerland, Costa Rica, Serbia second. It really is.
It's tight.
It's one of the harder groups to call this. For me, you know what?
Surprises in World Cups as well. So we can sit here and we can predict what we think is going to happen, but I remember Costa Rica beat Scotland in 1990. You know.
I mean, Rob, you're right. We will predict, and everybody enjoys trying to prove that they know what they're talking about. But what I would say is this: that and any of those three genuinely have the potential to go through. For me, I'd actually say that Costa Rica-Serbia game, the first round of this group, could potentially be key because if you're Switzerland manager, you'll be looking at the three games thinking Brazil is obviously the toughest game. Mm-hmm. Not that you would be happy to lose, but if you're going to lose, then Brazil is the game that almost, well, okay, you're not happy, but you can move on from it because you've got two chances afterwards. Yeah. If Serbia, Costa Rica draw, then Switzerland, I'd say, are in driving seat. Yeah. If one of Costa Rica or Serbia win heavily in that first game, get goal difference, get goals, get confidence, points on the board, then it starts to look difficult. So that first game week is going to be key for me, I think.
All right, Andrew, so go on in, stick your neck out. What do you think?
Oh, Christ. Okay, I'm going to have to stick my neck out. Like I said, any of the three for second could be, but I'm going to go Switzerland because of the Bundesliga pedigree. I mean, it's not much more than that for me, to be honest.
Fair enough.
But yeah, Brazil and then Switzerland second. Switzerland to face Germany in the next round.
I've purely gone for Costa Rica because I feel like they've got this siege mentality, siege mentality, and I feel like they could do a little bit what Iceland did a couple of years ago. But honestly, I'm looking at all the squads, and I like Serbia's squad. I think there's some real talent there. Possibly they're going to lack goals. I'm not sure, but we'll find out.
Well, yeah, it's a tough one to call. The problem is, I mean, this is what I think is almost morally wrong, that any of those teams to come at least second in the group is a real achievement. Their reward is almost certainly going to be to face the best country in the world in the next round, Germany. It's just not fair, you know. But anyway, we'll see.
There is a small chance Brazil could play Germany in the second round.
Well, I mean, Germany, I would say, and again, we'll come on to this in the next show, of course, Germany, I'm certain, will win Group F. So whoever comes, I expect Brazil to win Group E. If they don't, then they'll be in trouble.
Yeah. It's interesting as well because the World Cup, some of the bigger nations and more established nations have got a lot of pressure on them, and they can often play within themselves. And you often see a team that just play without fear. And if you can get a team to do that, which is difficult, they could go so far. If a team can just release the shackles and play without fear, I know it's easier said than done, but that's why some of these smaller nations are dangerous. Do you remember Cameroon in 1990? That's one example. Just a team playing for the joy of playing, and almost playing like you would as a child a bit, you know, with that sort of innocence and just going out and enjoying yourselves. Whereas I think England, for example, the players freeze a little bit and are stifled with. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a major point. You look at all the predictions we do. Really, for me, in a World Cup, the nature of the tournament, its mentality has got to be the key thing. Because in the end, you're all athletes. You can all run for 90 minutes. Yeah. Can you hold it together or not? No matter how talented you are, if you can't hold it together, and at all levels, hold it together as a favourite in a game, hold it together as an underdog, doesn't matter. If you can't keep it together here, you've got no chance.
It's a tough one because, on the one hand, you want to, as a manager, say you're a manager of a team in the World Cup, you want to be organised, you want to have shape, you don't want to get ripped apart 5-6-0 and be embarrassed and humiliated on a world stage. I get that. But there's a part of me, maybe like the boy in me that loves football, that says the World Cup comes around every 4 years. There's a strong chance that if you're in a World Cup squad, it'll be your only ever World Cup. And there's a part of me that would loves to see teams just go for it. And I think the neutrals always respond to those sort of teams. You know, teams that just go for it, gung-ho a little bit. It's reckless sometimes, but and I think if one or two teams did that with, for example, Belgium, they've got so much talent. If they just went for it, I don't know. I think Denmark won the European Championships in '92. They just went for it. They played without fear.
I mean, and you know, when you've got a few players who you know have the quality, like Denmark did in the early '90s, then it gives you that. You do need some quality. You can't. I mean, if you're just a hard-working team going ho, you know you're going to get beaten. But if you've got 2 or 3 quality players, that's all you need. Yeah. 2 or 3 go-to guys.
Yep.
You know, a creator, a finisher, a defender. Literally anything really could happen.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We'll see. I mean, it's a blooming tough tournament to call, Rob.
Now, having spoke to Jim last week, have you changed your opinion on France, or do you still think France?
France, for me, I'm still. I mean, I do take what Jim was saying about their perhaps lack of mental strength, but they are just so ridiculously talented. I still see them. I still see them as a very, very strong favourite. I can't look past them, to be honest.
I'm going for France just because I called it at the beginning, and I want to be consistent. And I realise that there's a strong chance Germany or Brazil or Spain could do it, but like you say, France's talent is just unreal. So we shall see.
It is. It absolutely is. So yeah,
mate, we're going to wrap it up because you've got to go to Tumin for the Crunch game in Siberia. So best of luck to FC Tumin, and I will upload this and we'll do Group F next week.
Cool. Sounds good to me.
I'll try and get a couple of more people. Cheers, Andrew.
All right, buddy. Cool.
Cheers, mate.